Alright, so today I want to show you 10 different ways that you can make a career working with reptiles. And there's a lot of different options you have. As a matter of fact, you can work part-time, kind of squeeze it into your day job, or you can transition away completely from your day job and go full-time into the reptile business. And that's essentially what I do here. I pretty much made the jump away from my day job. I'm here pretty much working from home, working with reptiles, and there's a lot of different options you can actually take. I'm going to go down the list of my top 10 ways that you can actually make a career working with reptiles. Alright, so the number one way to make a career with reptiles, and that would be to breed them. And a lot of people are actually thinking about breeding ball pythons. That's pretty much what I do on my channel. It can be pretty addictive. There's a lot when it comes to breeding. And I'd say, you know, there's a lot of people that say you can't really make a lot of money, and there's some people that make an insane amount of money breeding reptiles. And really what it comes down to is when you breed an animal, essentially what you're doing is you're reproducing that animal. So if you buy something really inexpensive, like if you buy like a normal wild type ball python and then you breed it, essentially what you're getting is really cheap offspring. And sometimes if you get a cheap enough snake and you're trying to sell the offspring, sometimes the sale of the offspring won't cover your expenses, versus if you have like a mid-range or really high-end ball python and you start breeding those, essentially what you're doing is you're reproducing that high-end ball python, and then you're making a lot more money to put back into your business. And the cool thing I like about breeding too is I'd say it really kind of saves the species from the brink of extinction in a lot of cases. For example, take the crested gecko. The crested gecko they actually thought was extinct in the 1800s all the way up into 1994. We thought we had lost that species, and then they found a real small population on an island, rediscovered the species. Now we introduced it into the pet industry. And the funny thing is a lot of people always say, I see this all the time on a lot of the internet forums, a lot of people are like, it's not right to make money breeding reptiles. But actually just the opposite is true. So if you take one of these crested geckos and you breed it and you start selling it and making money, essentially what other people do is they start thinking, hey, I can actually breed this and make money myself. So then they buy it and then breed it, and then everybody else starts buying it, and then, you know, they start spreading the crested gecko over the entire hobby. And now a species that is pretty much on the brink of extinction is really prevalent all through the hobby, and it's one of the most stable species that there is. It's really popular. Pretty much saved it from the brink of extinction. Alright, so the number 2 career path that you can follow working with reptiles, and that is you can start a reptile YouTube channel. And let me tell you, this one's a little bit tricky because you really can't jump into it and start making money right from the start. I would say in most cases it takes hundreds of videos over a period of a couple years, at least. I'd say at least 2 to 5 years before you're actually making some decent money to where you can actually pay the bills from your YouTube money. And let me tell you, I've been posting videos every single day for 2 years straight, and I'm finally to the point where I'm making more money on YouTube than I am from the sale of my hatchlings. But let me tell you, when I first started, I was essentially pumping out a lot of content, making zero for the first 6 months, and then when I finally got monetized, I was making about 80 cents a day. So let me tell you, when you first start YouTube, it is extremely frustrating, extremely trying, and I'd say in a lot of cases, what you really need to do is if you're going down this YouTube path, you need to study YouTube. You need to really do your homework and figure out how to succeed over on YouTube. There's a lot of channels that just kind of really focus on how to succeed. What you really need to do, you need to have a focused topic, you need to put out a lot of videos, and you need to be consistent to really make it over on YouTube. Alright, so the number 3 career path that you can follow is starting an online website selling reptile supplies. And I would say this is a little bit tricky too, because essentially you have to have a lot of overhead. You have, in a lot of cases, you'll have like a huge warehouse full of all this stuff, and then you have to actually work with the sales and the customers, box stuff up and ship it. I've seen some people start really small and kind of work up from there, kind of, you know, buying in wholesale, buying in bulk, and then reselling on an online store. Works pretty well. well. As a matter of fact, I've seen some really small stores when I first started in reptiles that have really increased and really blew up on the internet, and now they have lots and lots of products and they're doing really well. That's another place you can actually work with reptiles, is just on the consumable side, selling reptile supplies. Alright, so the number 4 career path that you can follow would be to open up a reptile pet store, which would be pretty awesome. As a matter of fact, I work pretty closely with one of the reptile stores here in Colorado. As a matter of fact, they're doing so well, they're starting to open multiple locations throughout Colorado. Pretty awesome. The thing with the pet store is you have to have employees, and then you have a lot of overhead because you have to pay the rent and the light and the heating and the employees. There's a lot of overhead to a pet store, but let me tell you, you can make some pretty good money, and in a lot of cases, especially if you specialize in something like reptiles, I think you can do really well having a pet store. Alright, so reptile career path number 5, you can actually do children's educational programs, which I think would probably be one of the funnest jobs in reptiles. Essentially what you do is you take all your friendliest reptiles, pack them up, and you go from school to school, from classroom to classroom, and you'd really educate children on a lot of the reptiles, help them to overcome their fear of a lot of these reptiles. You can actually lay out some of your friendliest snakes and have the kids interact with the snakes. I've seen some people do this. It's pretty awesome. And I think that would be a really awesome career path. Alright, so for number 6, you could actually work for a zoo, which I've actually considered before. The only problem with me, working at a zoo is that the zoo is so far from my house. You'd really need to be pretty close to the zoo to actually get there to do some programs there. They have actually quite a few openings at some of the local zoos. It's pretty surprising. I wouldn't mind working in some of the reptile houses, even if I was just taking care of the animals, learning the care and the upkeep, and just really kind of coming up to speed. Even doing educational programs where you're talking to large groups of people with maybe some snakes or some lizards or something like that. I think it would be really cool working at a zoo. Alright, so career path number 7 is only for the brave of heart, and that would be you could milk venomous snakes. I've actually seen some people on YouTube do this where they actually take like a rattlesnake or something like that. They'll put the fangs into like on the top of a container, and then essentially what it does is the venom gets pumped into a container, and then you seal up the container and sell the venom. That venom can sell for a lot of money. It's pretty incredible how much money you can make milking venomous snakes. The only problem is every time you go to work, you're taking your life into your hands. And I decided, as a matter of fact, I considered actually doing that for a while until I saw some people having really close calls with some of these venomous snakes. And I decided then that I don't think I'm going to get into venomous, especially working every single day trying to milk venomous snakes. I would think you could make a lot of money, but on the flip side, you're taking a really big risk. Alright, so for career path number 8, you can actually be a reptile pest control service. And I've actually seen some crazy YouTube videos of these guys pretty much doing pest control just for reptiles. Down in Florida, running around removing all the crocodiles, the alligators, the Burmese pythons and stuff like that. I think you'd really have a lot of business, especially if you went down like somewhere tropical, like down in Florida. There'd be a lot of business. The only thing that kind of keeps me from getting into something like this would be the crocodiles. I'm kind of a snake guy. I can handle the snakes. I could probably remove a pretty big Burmese python. But when it comes to the crocodiles, I'm a little hesitant to actually jump in there and tackle something like that. But I think it would be a really interesting career path. Alright, so career path number 9 is you could be a veterinarian. And I would say this one's a little bit more difficult than the other ones because you need quite a few years of formal education before you can actually go to work and start making some money. Versus a lot of the other ones I talked about, you could pretty much jump right into most of these without a lot of education. And it's kind of interesting being a veterinarian. As a matter of fact, I've taken quite a few animals in, and it seems like every time I go, they have a whole bunch of stuff they're working on that I've never really seen before. A lot of really interesting issues with a lot of these animals. It's pretty amazing some of the stuff that the veterinarians can do to actually fix some of my animals when we run into health issues. All right, so the number 10 career path that you could follow, you could start a reptile zoo. And I think this would be really interesting, especially if you have a really large collection of reptiles at your house, kind of like I have here. I have some really big snakes, some frogs, a tortoise and some geckos and stuff like that. And you start thinking, hey, why not just take all that stuff, put it into like a zoo environment where people can walk through, pay admission, and help pay for the food and the rent and everything, and maybe I'll make a little money on the side. I think it'd be kind of interesting. The only problem with the reptile zoo is the initial investment would probably be quite a bit of money. Not only would you have to buy a lot more extra animals, but you'd have to actually invest the money to set up some professional enclosures, something that looks like a zoo, something that would impress some people and keep them coming back. I think it would be a really interesting career path if you actually had that initial investment and could invest into the infrastructure into a reptile zoo. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Sam Pine asks, what is your favorite snake besides ball pythons? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I started with king snakes. I think pretty much king snakes are my most favorite snakes other than ball pythons. The problem is I kind of got out of king snakes because the demand is not there, especially on a breeding operation. You're looking for kind of the supply and demand. If I produce a lot of snakes, I want a lot of people to actually buy a lot of hatchlings. And if you look at the supply and the demand for king snakes versus ball pythons, there's a bigger demand for ball pythons, and that's one of the reasons I switched over. You can also make a lot more money with ball pythons, and there's a lot more color and pattern mutations in ball pythons than king snakes. But all things equal, if I was actually to get one pet, ball python or king snake, I would say it's pretty much a tie. I really love the king snakes. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.